Test drive the vehicle for proper operation and you are done.
To replace an externally mounted mixture control solenoid on a GM vehicle, first turn off all the accessories including the ignition key. Remove the air cleaner. Unplug the 2-wire harness from the solenoid. Remove the mounting screws and remove the solenoid from the carburetor by gently pulling up with a slight twisting motion. Compare the new and old solenoids to be sure of correct replacement. Place a dab of clean engine oil on the O-rings of the new solenoid. Now carefully install the new solenoid in the carburetor using downward pressure and a slight twisting motion. Reinstall the mounting screws and tighten to the proper torque specifications. Reattach the wiring harness. Reinstall the air cleaner and reconnect any hoses disconnected earlier. Lastly, test drive the vehicle for correct diagnosis.
To install and adjust an internally mounted mixture control solenoid on a General Motors carburetor, you will need a magnetic screwdriver and assorted bits, a digital volt ohm meter, a carburetor gauge set, a mixture control adjusting tool, an idle mixture adjusting tool, an idle mixture seal plug removal tool, a small pin punch and a ball peen hammer, a 1/8 inch drill bit, a number 8 sheet metal screw, a pair of locking pliers, the appropriate carburetor gasket set, a small tube of thread locking compound, and the correct mixture control solenoid for your application. To prevent burns, always begin repairs on a cool engine. Because gasoline and gas vapors are extremely flammable, there are some important precautions to remember whenever working on any part of the fuel system. Do not work in an area with a gas heater equipped with a pilot light without having adequate ventilation. Even if there isn't a gas heater with a pilot light, still make sure to work in a well-ventilated area. Don't smoke when performing fuel system repairs. Keep open flames, sparks, and unprotected light bulbs away from the immediate work area. And, most importantly, have a fire extinguisher close at hand. Begin by making sure all accessories, including the ignition key, are turned off. Label and remove any hoses or wires attached to the air cleaner housing. Remove the air cleaner from the carburetor. For our demonstration, the carburetor will be off from the engine during the replacement. For complete details on carburetor removal procedures, refer to our video segment on carburetor rebuilding. Remove the upper choke lever from the end of the shaft by removing the retaining screw and rotating the lever. Then remove the choke rod from the lower lever inside the float bowl casting by holding the lever outward and twisting the choke rod counterclockwise. Use a small pin punch to drive the accelerator pump lever pivot pin inward until the lever can be removed from the air horn. Set the lever aside and out of your way. Next, remove the vacuum brake hose from the tube on the float bowl. Remove the air horn attaching screws, and don't forget the 2 countersunk screws inside the throat of the carburetor. A magnetic screwdriver can be used to prevent dropping the screws. Carefully remove the throttle position sensor plunger. Do not lose or misplace this item. After all the attaching screws are removed, lift the air horn straight up and off from the float bowl. On our carburetor, the accelerator pump plunger, MC solenoid plunger, and air horn gasket remained attached to the air horn itself. If the air horn gasket is damaged during the procedure, a new one can be obtained in a carburetor rebuilding kit. Remove the plastic filler block from over the float valve. Carefully lift out each metering rod assembly along with its return spring. Next, using the lean stop adjustment tool, turn the lean stop screw all of the way in while counting the number of turns. Record the number of turns and then remove it from the float bowl. Next, remove the screw retaining the MC solenoid electrical connector. Now you can carefully lift the mixture control solenoid and its connector assembly from the float bowl. Compare the old solenoid to the new one to ensure proper replacement. Carefully set the new solenoid and wire into place. Be sure the bottom of the solenoid sits properly on the large spring in the bottom of the float bowl. Then reinstall the screw that secures the electrical connector on the carburetor. Now, reposition the lean mixture stop. Once again, set it to the same number of turns as it was positioned to earlier. Now reinstall the metering rods and springs. Insert the lean limiting adjustment tool from the gauge kit into the hole next to the metering rod and down to the base of the metering jet. Next, insert and hold the MC solenoid plunger lightly down against its stop. Using the mixture control adjusting tool, turn the lean mixture screw counterclockwise until the plunger does not touch the gauge. Then, turn the screw clockwise until the plunger just touches the gauge. Once adjusted, remove the mixture control solenoid plunger. Now you can remove the gauge and reinstall the plastic filler block over the float valve. We suggest always installing a new air horn gasket from a carburetor kit to prevent leaks or future problems. Lift the corner of the gasket and install the accelerator pump. Reinstall the MC solenoid plunger. Now remove the plug from the air horn that covers the lean mixture screw and save the plug. Next, using a 1/8 inch drill bit, drill a hole into the rich mixture screw plug. Insert a number 8 sheet metal screw, and with a screwdriver or pliers, remove the plug from the air horn. Also, remove the cover over the idle air bleed valve on the air horn by drilling out the rivets. With the cover removed, closely examine the top of the valve and note whether or not it has a letter stamped on it. If it does, it will affect the final adjustment procedure. Next, reinstall the air horn on the carburetor and tighten the air horn screws in the proper sequence to prevent warping or leaks. The proper tightening sequence for the carburetor you are working on can be found in a Haynes manual designed for your particular vehicle. Reinstall the throttle position sensor plunger. Now place the idle air float gauge from the adjusting kit into the D-shaped hole in the air horn. With light pressure, push down on the gauge to measure the amount of travel of the solenoid plunger. The correct amount of travel is 4/32 of an inch. If the amount of travel needs to be adjusted, use the tool from the gauge kit that fits the rich stop screw and turn the screw either up or down to achieve the correct amount of travel. When the adjustment is correct, reinstall the plug and use a drop or two of red Loctite to seal the plug back in place. This plug must be reinstalled to maintain the adjustment once back on the engine. Remove the float gauge and place the hook-shaped idle air valve gauge into the D-shaped hole. Position the hooked end of the tool over the top of the idle air bleed valve. Hold the gauge down lightly until the solenoid plunger bottoms against its stop.